So, Devon Carson, you were just in Nashville for the last week, going to some music festival, I believe. Tell me about your experience, and I want to talk about broadly the future of the music industry, maybe coming at it from like the Nashville angle. I also want to talk about Nashville as a city in general, as like maybe an up and coming city still for people to move to, like young family type people. It's affordable. It's got a lot going for it. Also, right this second as we record, there's a hurricane that's kind of like coming at it, which is interesting.
Do you think it'll make it all the way to Tennessee? The hurricane?
It's supposed to. Like,
is
by
that
the
how
maps.
that works? Holy shit. Yeah. I guess I was wondering about that as I was down there because I was in a hellacious storm driving back to Huntsville, Alabama, the likes of which you just don't see on the West Coast. I mean, like, you know, it felt like ping pong ball-sized raindrops, you know, the ones that just kind of like you can't see through the windshield no matter how fast the wipers are going. And I was thinking, I was like, you know, in relation to Nashville being and like Alabama, you know, tangentially being cool places to live, which they do very much seem to be. Boy, people do have a bit of virtue to expound about the winter times and the storms there. As soon as you start talking to people, they're like, oh, yeah. We've seen a lot of you people that really dig the summertime vibe here. You know, maybe come during the winter or during a fat storm and see if you still vibe.
I think, to be fair to Nashville, usually hurricanes, I think, just veer to the East Coast. Once they like come up on Florida, they just like go
Nashville's
this one's weird because it's going to go kind of west for a minute and north and west before it goes east. And it's supposed to just kind of like sit on Nashville for like a minute. Yeah.
Whoa. Also, like, you know, I've been on the West Coast for probably 20 years now. And like, but I grew up on the East Coast and in Colorado. And let me tell you, man, the thunder and lightning and like the way that storms just kind of present themselves there, you forget in California because a mean storm here is like a daily there. You know what I mean? And like the mean storms there, they put you back in your little monkey brain, dude. You're like, oh shit. Okay, so man, so much cool stuff happened in Nashville. You know, I'll try really hard not to draw too many contrasts between the Bay Area and Nashville, but I do feel like that was one of the primary lenses. And I don't mean to disparage the Bay because the Bay has a lot of awesome stuff going on too, musically, as a music scene. But there's something that's going on in Nashville that I think is very on the pulse and is very next and is very now. Which is that I think we are, and this kind of ties into a futurist angle generally, but I think that we're losing our fascination with impressiveness and celebrity in a certain sense, and cleanliness and slickness and producedness in favor of stuff that just feels that feels more simple and simplistic and working class coded. And I really saw that in Nashville. I felt like all the music was for working class people. The songs were for working class people. The town is really built for working class people to come and have a good time. It is expensive, kind of, but it's not gougy or exorbitant. I mean, maybe coming from California, that's why I feel that way, because daily life is gougy and exorbitant here. But man, I just really love the ethos of that town. It feels very fulsome in its vibe, and it feels like there's a lot for everyone there. And I think it's in a weird way, kind of a futuristic place for musicians where there's 50 shows a night and everybody's getting paid like good, you know, like I think $200 is the base pay for like the chillest musician at the shittiest place, which is sadly like somewhere in the median, maybe even the high range for like a show that you're putting on in California, which is absolutely absurd until you're at like the regional level. Boy, I have so many thoughts about Nashville, man. I feel like being there.
Would you move there? Let me just ask you that.
Oh yeah, in a heartbeat.
Okay.
100%. It's too cute. It's too cute. There's too diverse of an experience to not find something that you land in. I mean, one night I was two-step dancing at a bowling alley one of the cutest nights I've had in a while. You know, just seeing these people all, you know, just gently swinging with each other. And then the night after that, I'm at a funk and soul jam where Leon Bridges is there, and he's hanging out listening to some of the best improvised music I've ever heard. Then you've got your fill of country music, of Americana music, you know, folk music. Atlanta is a 1-hour flight. Muscle Shoals is a 2-hour drive. You know, you're really close to basically every center of everything other than fashion. I mean, other than New York, you know.
Can I hit you with a criticism and see how it lands with you?
Oh, so, baby, hit me.
Last time I was in Nashville, I've been there twice. Actually, both times I was in Nashville, I had this take. Going to a lot of shows, like you totally, I at least got the sense that there's a country type vibe and twang that is kind of forced and kind of fake. And I feel like when you go to a show on the West Coast, whoever you're seeing, for the most part, they're totally their authentic selves and they're doing their thing, and that's exactly who they are. I feel like everyone has to wear a little bit of a costume, just exactly like Elvis did and all the famous acts of all time coming out of that part of the world. They're always kind of sort of acting, and this is a critique of broadly like anything in the South, is that when you're wearing cowboy boots and a cowboy hat, you're LARPing. It's a LARP. It's fake. It's a costume. It's a Halloween costume, because like none of y'all are cowboys. Like maybe 1% of the population owns a fucking cow, and like that whole region. But it's all, and when you walk down the main strip of Nashville, which is like a Hollywood Boulevard type of thing, it's like just touristy. Every store is like cowboy hats, cowboy boots, leather jackets. Like it is a simulation. Like it's totally a simulation, just exactly like Disneyland is a simulation of reality. It's not real. Dude, it's all fake. And I don't think it's necessarily bad, but if I were to want to go to any show anywhere on the globe in the world, I want to kind of see someone being themselves and not putting on a costume. I think it's fine to put on costumes, and that's also a thing. I kind of want to like go to Vegas to see a costume act, though. I don't really want to like pretend like it's real when it's totally fucking not. Okay, how does that land with you?
Okay, when do the whites band together to say my culture is not your costume? Not allowed. It's not allowed. Cowboy boots and hats are ours again now. Again. No, I do agree with you, but there's something I think about it that is again, like I think that working class music dithers down to the common denominator, and there's just something about that like whole affect, that performative kind of moment that just speaks to people on like a weirdly instinctual level. Like everybody down there is performing, you know, Olympic level politeness, and like
people are so nice in that part of the world.
Man. And it's all very performative in like a semi-altruistic way, which feels very different than California. Here's the thing I'll say about California, though, is that I think everybody here is being performative, but they're performing authenticity. And I think that there's just like, I feel like it weirdly is like a Trump Kamala thing if you just kind of like, you know, space out and let the picture emerge on its own. But it's like, you know, Trump is coded to all of these kind of like simple 4-letter word, working class value type things. And his performance is very much performing a script that's already been written for him and is pretty tread, right? And I feel like, yeah, in a certain way, Kamala is like trying to perform authenticity and just not quite hitting the mark for a lot of people, because you can't be performing authenticity. But that's the whole problem out here on the West Coast, is that the signaling that you're trying to tell everybody is like, I am myself. And it's like, look, man, you're just searching like the rest of us. It's okay. You don't have to have a cohesive identity. That's what art's about. It's about exploring that, you know?
Okay, I mean, you're totally right, because like everybody is performing their culture. That's whatever their culture is. We're all performing it, and we all know, and this is important because we all know what the boundaries are, and then we know how to have fun with them, and then that's when you become like, I'm original or whatever. But even that original is like a LARP. So one more question about the Nashville music scenes. I'm curious about this. So right now, if you just like look at national music, you'll notice a phenomenon where big acts like Beyonce are releasing their like country music album. This isn't like totally new. Like Bob Dylan did this. I mean, like kind of throughout history, like big
Yeah.
acts will do a country music album. But right now, like
Mhm.
Beyonce is the big one. How does that land with people there? Do people there feel like that's a phony LARPy thing that big corporate West Coasty folks are doing, or are they like, yeah, this is someone's doing our thing?
I love it because you're such a West Coast intellectual, dude. You've already over intellectualized it twice before they would even thought about it that way.
Oh, good point. Good point. Shit.
they're not even fucking thinking like that, man. I don't
Okay.
even know if they're even thinking one layer deeper than like Beyonce came out with the new album, you know?
Okay.
And like legit bless them for it, right? Because like that's part of being out there, that it's just more elemental and people are a lot, ignorance can be its own thing, right? Like
Mhm.
being blind to certain truths can be its own type of harmful, but being overly aware of certain things can also drive a lot of weird kind of like harmful behavior in society. So I find people out there just much less concerned in general.
Okay. Well, I actually like that.
Yeah.
I think that's good. I think that we can over intellectualize anything, and we probably do.
True.
So, speaking of over intellectualizing, though, you and I have both been keyed into this phenomenon in the music industry where people are now releasing a lot of videos about how the band is dead. Back
Hmm.
in the day, you'd have like the Kinks and the Rolling Stones
It was
and
all
like
bands.
Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
It was all bands topping the
Hmm.
charts. And now it's Taylor Swift, it's Beyonce,
Hmm.
I mean, it's just
Right.
one
Kendrick,
named person. Yeah,
Meek Mill.
Kendrick. Yeah, that is who is
Right.
releasing like big hits these days.
Right. Right.
And so like there's an actual argument that bands are kind of done and kind of dead. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts about this. I mean, my thought is that I still do personally listen to a lot of bands, even bands that are
Hmm.
active now. Like The National is still on
Hmm.
tour,
Hmm.
and like I listen to them, their band. But I also am like intimately aware of Matt Berninger is the lead singer. Like I
Right.
know I don't know them as a band. I know them as individuals at the same time. So like Matt
Right.
Berninger has a solo album. It's like to me it's the same thing as a national album. It's just whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so we do, I think, actually legitimately live in the era of the individual artist act. And I
Hmm.
do kind of think it's true that bands, for whatever reason, are done. And I want to get your thoughts
Mm.
on one, if you think that's true, but two, like why you think that this is now the thing.
Man, I was reflecting on this last night actually, and I wonder if social media has been a
Hmm.
big driver in this, because I think like, and higher levels of awareness of how the record industry works and how splits work, because I think now even at like the lower level everybody's aware that as soon as you start giving equity in your songwriting out, that's like a pretty significant share of the money that you'll ever harvest from something, period, right? Like
Hmm.
if everybody is credited as a songwriter, so it's a band and all four people get like an equal share of the songwriting or the publishing, I mean that's like a pretty big that's a pretty big chunk that I think most people are more interested in keeping. And the other thing is that in order to have a cohesive social media presence, you have to kind of have like a consolidated image.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think it's harder and harder for people to find that between four people. I was actually just shooting a band this weekend called A Brother's Fountain. It's 8 dudes, and they all
Well,
have an insanely cohesive kind of group philosophy and social media presentation and stuff. And I think they're a bit of an anomaly. But I think my hot take is that bands are going to come back and they're just going to explode, because I
hmm.
think that the way that music has been compartmentalized and the way that we've been individualized and kind of set against each other as a musical cohort, I mean, millennials and Gen Z, I think in particular, social media coupled with streaming has really forced everyone to be ruggedly individualistic and really kind of try to fight for their chunk of equity in the system for themselves.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that as everyone is kind of really starting to get their hands on how the tools work in terms of creating a cohesive identity. Because think about like the record industry is failing and crumbling because it doesn't understand how to pivot in a meaningful way, I think. And bands were really less a function from the 50s all the way up until the 90s. They're less a function of any kind of organic system of creation and more a function of record labels and having a marketing machine, which is something that allows you to create a cohesive identity between 4 or 5 or 8 dudes.
I think that, and also that it precedes that, because back in the day, before there was a thing as recorded music, there were like at bars and venues, there would be a band that would play.
Right. And there wasn't this idea of personal celebrity yet.
Yeah.
Like the idea of celebrity was, I think, a lot broader and a lot less individualized. It's like Led Zeppelin was Led Zeppelin and everybody knew all 4 dudes in Led Zeppelin. You know what I mean? And like now, celebrity has been kind of micronized. You're everybody's a micro celebrity at some level because they carry on their identity some amount of likes. And so, I think all of those forces have potentially forced people to be more tactical and consolidate their identity down to something that's easy to market without a team, which is a person.
So I kind of actually might disagree with you that bands are going to come raging back. And I think it, like, you keyed into something that I think is also true about social media, but social media and the experience of taking in media through a screen in general is that we're all looking for mediated or parasocial relationships. And we form parasocial relationships with people on Twitter, people on YouTube, with like people like books that we buy, or even you go to a museum and you kind of like, the person's name, and you only truly form that parasocial relationship with one individual. You can't really do it with a band. Even when you say like Led Zeppelin, like I know them so well, but like I have no parasocial relationship with that entity. I have a relationship with Robert Plant, I don't really, but I mean, like I if I were to form a relationship, a parasocial relationship with anyone, like it would be a Robert Plant. It wouldn't be Led Zeppelin, right? So, and I think that's the thing, and that's what keeps people coming back.
I like that
in an addictive way to consume art through screens is this parasocial relationship phenomenon that, like, man, it's powerful and it works. It's crazy.
It does. Yeah. Well, here's the reason I think bands are going to come back is I think, and I've been right before, baby, but the next wave of music is going to be very classic rock influenced and very country influenced. And I think maybe folk will have another moment, but folk always in some weird way stays percolating in the background of the American zeitgeist. It never really goes away because it's inviolably dope. But I think the next round is going to be very classic rock driven, very country driven, and I think those forms lend themselves to bands in a more kind of quintessential way. I mean, if you look at classic rock, I mean, the dude, he who writes the riff wrote the song, in a way that doesn't really exist in like a Taylor Swift version or even in a hip hop version where, like, it takes more ingredients to make a classic rock song than it does a hip hop song, than it does a singer-songwriter song. I think if rock and roll and soul music, which it feels like is now kind of, we obviously hit the neo soul bubble. People are tired of that shit already. And now I think we're sliding back into, rock and roll, soul, classic rock, country music. Those are all really kind of pretty clustered around a dense center of musical, hardness. They're all very related to each other. If we see that start coming back in a big way, bands will have to, because it just takes, it takes a sick organ solo and a fucking crazy guitar riff and a singer that can really sing. And people are, and to finish my point, if my thesis is correct that social media and streaming and stuff have kind of compartmentalized the artist to a place where he has to be an individual because that's all of the marketing resources he has, because it takes kind of a team to cohere for people's identities and present them as like a group. I now see people doing that for themselves. Like, go check out a Brothers Fountain. I mean, they're a really, really killer band out of Colorado, 8 dudes. And like, they're effortlessly entangled with each other on social media, and their branding is very cohesive, man. And like, they've got merch and like all this different stuff. And it's all this nice, kind of tight little brand ecosystem because they're either very young millennials or, the oldest Gen Z cohort. Like, they just grew up 10 years before me, post everything that I grew into, internet marketing, social, your identity as a function of your personal brand, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, last question on this. So I just interviewed Catherine D, and she had this take. It was about writing, but I think it applies maybe to music as well, that it's not about the writing, it's about the person. It's about your personality and who you are. I think it's very true for music too. Like it at some level, it doesn't matter if the music is good or not. It matters if you like the people. And I feel this like hugely because like I don't listen to one single band or musician that I wouldn't totally hang out with. If I got the sense of like I wouldn't hang out with these dudes, like I'm not gonna listen to it. Or maybe I will, but like that would be the exception. Like Nick Cave, like, dude, I hear him and I'm like, you are so cool, dude. I want to hang out with you. Like that's my thought. Like every time he comes on, I'm like, dude, he's so cool. It's not like I listen to Nick Cave's like this is the best song ever or whatever. It's like, dude, he's cool. I want his coolness to rub off on me.
Man, I think undeniably true. I mean, recently I had a talk with, I play in a little jazz trio with an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old. And they're like a very deep resource for me to ask questions about how young people are perceiving culture and, sometimes bounce things off of them because I think they've got a perspective that I just can't have. And I was like, hey, boys, I'm just not landing on social media in the way that I would have thought that I was. What do you guys like that I do? What do you guys not like that I do? What do you think I could do different? And they both had the exact same answer almost instantly, which shocked me, which was, it had nothing to do with my music, but they were like, we love it when you're vlogging. We love it when you do these like 5 to 8 story posts about something that you're thinking about, some kind of philosophical thing. You seem to have pretty cohesive thoughts and stuff. I mean, it's what I'm doing here, and I think that what that does for them is it illuminates my heart, or it illuminates my intention, or it illuminates a different part of my selfness that they don't experience from me through my music or through playing with them in person. And I mean, I was surprised by that, and it's true. Those are the things that always get the most traction and the most love from people. And something that I'm doubling down on now. But it's funny because it's like, look, we do a podcast, which is just us. It's just us, dude. Our identities, our fucking dumbass thoughts are the star of this show, and there's like a lot of people that listen to it now. So I think our identity, and our authenticity is definitely king now.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I totally agree. It's hard to see it any other way when I feel like that's what hits as a consumer of any sort of media or art. You consume it in terms of like very directly the person creating it. And my last thought here is this is all around good news and a good thing in the world of AI. Because this means that artists can't go away because AI can't be a person. And if you really want the person, not the art, then AI can only give you the art, not the person. So that probably bodes well for humanity and for any creative person.
Yeah, if carpentry is any indicator, it's like I see that like as more processes are automated in my industry, like it does reduce the total amount of carpentry that's done by humans, because there's different building materials and different sciences and different techniques now. But most people who can afford it would love to have a craftsperson come in and make a personal statement in their house, because that's just kind of how we're coded and will be for several generations, I suspect. And I think what will happen with AI, hopefully, God, in the most hopeful scenario, is that AI begins to probably subsume a lot of the music as craft experiences. Like the music that major corporations are playing in their stores, the you know, the kind of like bulk music, you know what I mean, that happens, that really only ends up paying off a handful of artists in the first place anyways, right? Like no, Amazon's not buying indie records to play fucking over their shopping experience on Amazon Prime, you know, they're buying Taylor Swift, you know, they're buying Taylor Swift songs, you know, blah blah blah. So hopefully, yeah, I mean, we're always going to have a fetish for human made stuff. Hopefully it won't become too niche. I think that would be a shame to see that, like, we're in this huge explosion of creativity right now where all of these people feel franchised to make their stuff, and a lot of people are making dumb shit and it's clogging up the pipes. Eventually they'll give up because art's hard, and like our generation was taught that and discouraged from making it for that reason.
Yeah, totally. You know, yeah, good point. Yeah.
This whole generation's so funny. They're like, it's cool to be an artist, which I find so delightful, because I'm just like, oh, we'll see how far you get, dude, because like in my generation you were a loser and a crazy person to be an artist, and like there's some kind of proverbial wisdom to that. It's not a chill way to live your life, dude. You know, most people aren't set up for it.
Very true. All true.